I'm in my 50s now, and I still catch myself thinking that in some towns, time doesn't really move forward. It just gets stuck. It goes in circles. That's the kind of town I grew up in the mid-1980s. It was a small American town where on Friday nights everyone knew where you were, and on Sunday mornings everyone could see whether you were at church. One main street with a few stores that closed by 6. A gas station where people stopped just to talk. A high school football field that mattered more than anything happening outside town. And the church, big, bright, well taken care of. It wasn't just a building, it was the centre of everything. My parents were very religious, not for show, not for other people. Truly, religious, we lived by rules that were never questioned. If life was hard, you prayed. If you felt shame, you went to confession. If you had doubts, you trusted the priest. That's what I was taught from the time I was a child. I was 16, I was a quiet girl, a good student with a good reputation. I didn't rebel, I didn't run away, I didn't look for trouble, I wanted to be good. I wanted my parents to be proud of me. He was 30, he had come to our church not long before everything started. Young for a priest, calm, attentive. He didn't preach the way older pastors did. No pressure, no yelling. He listened. And now I understand that this was the most dangerous part. During confession, he didn't look past you. He looked straight into your eyes. He remembered small details. The next time, he might ask, "You said school has been hard for you. How are you doing now?" And you felt seen, like you weren't just another kid sitting in a pew. At first, it was just conversations, longer than they should have been. After services, in the empty church, when everyone else had already left. He asked about my fears, my doubts, that feeling that I wasn't living up to expectations. I cried. He said that was normal, that God loves those who question. I don't remember the moment when everything crossed the line. And that's probably the scariest part. There was no clear, "This is it." There were just many small steps. A touch on my hand that felt like support. Hugs that lasted a little too long. Words about a special connection. About how God sometimes speaks through closeness. The first time it happened, I didn't even fully understand what had happened. I remember the shame, the fear, and this strange feeling that it was my fault. Because I didn't stop it, didn't say no, didn't run away. The second time felt easier. And after that, it started happening after every service. Like it was supposed to, like it was part of my guilt and my duty at the same time. I lived with a constant knot in my chest. I prayed for it to stop, but at the same time I was afraid that if it did, he would turn away from me. I didn't know who I was without that special connection. When I realized I was pregnant, the world went quiet. Sounds became muffled. People talked, but I couldn't hear them. I couldn't imagine how to say it. I couldn't imagine what would happen next. And the worst part was that I couldn't say his name. I told him. He wasn't surprised. He became cold right away. He said no one could ever find out. That it would destroy his ministry, that it would destroy my family, that it would destroy the church. He talked about sin, but not his, about a test, but not responsibility. He started giving me money. He called it help. He called it care. And at the same time, he pushed me toward an abortion. He said it would be the lesser evil, that God would understand, that a child shouldn't be born into this kind of shame. I felt like I was suffocating under that pressure. When I finally told my parents I was pregnant, I hoped for just one thing, that they would see their daughter, not a sin. But that didn't happen. It felt like all the air left our house. They didn't yell right away. First there was a cold silence that made me want to disappear into the floor. Then came the words, hard, sharp words that stay with you forever. They told me I had destroyed everything they had lived for, that I had disgraced our family name, that I had disgraced the church, that people would look at them and whisper. I didn't tell them who the father was, and that only made things worse. Because in their eyes, I wasn't a victim. I was guilty, completely, without excuse. I felt it in church almost immediately. The looks, the whispers behind my back. People who had smiled at me just days before now avoided my eyes or stared at me with judgment, like I had come there on purpose to contaminate their space. Women who used to hug me after services now spoke through clenched teeth or didn't speak at all. I sat in the pew and felt like my body was there, but I wasn't. School wasn't any easier, everyone knew. In a small town, nothing stays hidden. I heard laughter in the hallways, caught fragments of conversations, felt people go quiet when I walked into a room. It wasn't open bullying, no fists, no shouting. It was worse. It was slow erasure. You're still there, but everyone has already written you off. I lived in constant fear of telling the truth, fear of not telling it, fear that if I opened my mouth, everything would get even worse. I thought I was alone, that this was only happening to me, that I deserved it. And then everything changed by accident. I found out about another girl, a classmate of mine. We had never been close, but one day I ran into her at a store and we started talking. At first about nothing important, and then she suddenly started crying and she told me something that made my legs give out. She had been pregnant by him years before me. She had an abortion because she was told it was the right thing to do, because she was given money, because she was forced to stay silent. I remember that moment very clearly. It wasn't just shock, it felt like my whole reality snapped into one terrible picture. I understood that this wasn't a mistake, not an accident, not a one-time thing. It was a pattern. We started meeting, just sitting together and talking, crying, sharing things we had carried inside for years. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't crazy, like there wasn't something wrong with me, like the pain I felt was real. Going to the police wasn't brave, it was desperate. We were terrified, we were shaking, we didn't know if anyone would believe us, and honestly, they didn't really. We were questioned in ways that made us feel guilty all over again. Why didn't you speak sooner? Why now? Why not back then? I felt that familiar feeling return, like I had to justify something that had already broken me. When my parents found out I had gone to the police, they became even angrier. In their eyes, I had done the worst thing possible. I hadn't just shamed them, I had taken it outside. I had stained the church's name. They told me it would have been better to stay quiet, that smart people keep things like this inside, that now everyone would talk about us. I gave birth to my daughter and lived with my parents. But it wasn't a home. It was a place where I was tolerated. I was constantly reminded of the price of being there. I felt their anger in small things, in looks, in silence, in the way they spoke about my child, not with love, but as a consequence. The only thing I held on to was my daughter. When she was little, I barely slept. I worked, helped around the house, swallowed the insults without a word. I knew that the moment I could, I would leave. When my daughter got older and I was able to work full-time, I moved out. At first it was terrifying, incredibly hard. There was never enough money. I took any job I could, physically exhausting work, but it was my life, my decision, my space. With time, I found a good job. We moved. Life seemed to slowly fall into place. My daughter grew up safe. She knew she was loved, and for a long time I thought that was the end of the story. But the truth is, sometimes I'm haunted by thoughts that scare me, really scare me. What if everyone else was right? What if it would have been easier if I had stayed silent, if I had had the abortion, if I had lived a quiet, normal life? I'm ashamed to admit this even to myself, because I love my daughter more than anything in the world. She is the best thing in my life. And yet, sometimes that question appears. And what frightens me most isn't the question itself. It's the fact that it exists at all. I don't know if I did the right thing. I only know that I made a choice I live with every single day. And that may be the most honest thing I can say.